At my own dinner table, my father let his words drip like poison across the plates. You and that kid of yours are nothing but parasites dragging this family down. My mother nodded along, smiling faintly, as if she'd been waiting for that moment to finally be spoken aloud. The twisted part? They were eating food from my kitchen, sitting comfortably in the house I bought with years of sacrifice. I didn't flinch. I didn't crumble. I met their eyes and said, "You have 24 hours to leave." The silence that followed hit harder than any slap. What they didn't realize was that I had been preparing for this reckoning long before that night even existed. From the outside, my family looked unbreakable. We were the picture-perfect Christmas card people. Matching sweaters, exaggerated grins, a glossy surface without a single crack showing. My mom always baking pies for church raffles, playing the part of the sweet homemaker. My dad shaking hands at neighborhood cookouts, charming people who never looked closely enough to see the rust underneath. And Knox, my brother, the golden child. Every conversation somehow circled back to him, his grand ideas, his next venture, his supposedly brilliant future. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, the dependable one, the one who never asked for anything because I was expected to hold everything together. That dinner didn't erupt out of nowhere. It was crafted over the course of years, stitched together from 1,000 subtle wounds. I remember being a little girl, standing barefoot on the cold kitchen tile, watching my mom stir chili while humming. She smelled like cinnamon and fabric softener, and yet she carried an unspoken law in the way she moved. Don't make trouble, don't challenge anything. Family above all, even if it meant losing yourself in the process. That rule became my cage. By 16, I already understood my rank in the household. Knox could total a car and my dad would shrug. Boys will be boys. I brought home an A- in physics, and my mom sighed. Don't beat yourself up, Nova. Not everyone can shine like Knox. I used to lie awake at night, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling, wondering if anyone saw me beyond what I could sacrifice. 10 years later, I had a son of my own. Asher, my anchor, my proof that life could be gentler than what I grew up with. He's 12 now, thoughtful, bright, still young enough to believe the world is mostly kind. I made myself a promise the night he was born, his tiny hand wrapped around my finger. He would never feel invisible. He would never be treated like I was. Maybe that's why that dinner hit so hard. Because upstairs, my son was probably hearing every cruel word his grandfather hurled at me. Maybe even noticing the quiet betrayal in his grandmother's silence. What kind of example was I setting if I let that poison seep into him? The home they called me a leech inside, that was mine. Built from late nights debugging code until dawn, endless meetings where I had to prove myself twice over just to be acknowledged. Every inch of that house was paid for with a kind of exhaustion they never bothered to see. Yet they sat there eating my food, sipping wine from glasses I bought, as though they were entitled to the fruits of my life. And it wasn't the first time. The calls always came in cycles. Can you loan us something just this once? Dad's truck died again. Knox needs help with this new idea. Each time I convinced myself it was family helping family, temporary. But temporary turned permanent. Permanent turned suffocating. Their problems became mine without permission. I learned the exact sound of my mother's voice when she wanted something. Tight, rehearsed, like she practiced her lines. Dad didn't ask, he commanded. Knox stayed conveniently in the shadows, letting them do their begging for himself. That's the groundwork you need to understand. When you see someone like me look her father straight in the face and tell him he has 24 hours to leave, it isn't a sudden burst of courage. It's the pressure of years finally collapsing at once. What snapped wasn't my anger. It was my tolerance. The final break didn't arrive in a single blow. It crept in slowly, like a cold draft under a locked door. At first you ignore it, and then suddenly it's everywhere. It started with a phone call. My mom's name glowing on my screen just as I was closing up at work. For a moment, I almost didn't answer. Calls from her never brought anything good. But some tiny part of me still held on to hope that maybe she just wanted to talk. Her voice trembled, rehearsed to sound desperate. "Your father needs surgery," she whispered. "His heart could fail any day. And our house? We're behind. 300,000. The bank is threatening foreclosure." I stared out the window of my office, the city lights smearing into streaks of color. I wanted to believe her, but I'd heard the script before. Big numbers, vague details, and always the same request: help us. I finally said, "I'll host dinner. Bring Dad, bring Knox. We will talk together." I heard her hesitation. She hadn't expected me to insist on a face-to-face conversation, but she agreed. That night, after Asher was asleep, I sat at my dining table and wrote rules on a sticky note. No attacking my kid, no money, end the meeting if necessary. I tucked it under my plate like armor. Still, doubt needled me. I called Tessa, my friend, my voice of reason, the person who had seen me through every storm since college. At our usual spot, she twirled a pencil as she listened. "Nova, they're lying," she said immediately. I tried to argue, but she cut me off. "No documents, no hospital papers. They just want a handout. They've drained you for years." She leaned in, voice low. "Record the dinner. Texas is one-party consent. If they twist things again, you'll have evidence." I nodded, swallowing my nerves. The next day dragged like a stone tied to my ankle. By evening, my hands shook as I set the table, lining everything up with precision. The pool outside glowed under the porch lights, still and silent. Asher sat on the couch with homework spread out like a protective barrier. I brushed his hair aside and said, "Tonight is for adults. Harper will watch you. No negotiations." He sighed, but agreed. When the knock came, it hit my chest like a hammer. My mom entered first, acting cheerful, carrying a bag of barbecue as if this was a harmless gathering. Dad followed, smaller than I remembered, but still sharp-eyed. Then Knox strolled in last, glued to his phone, smirking like he'd already won. Mom filled the first few minutes with pointless nostalgia. Old birthdays, old neighbors, recipes no one asked about. It was her usual tactic: soften the room before cutting into it. I stopped her. "Let's see the documents, hospital bills, bank notices, anything." Her smile quivered. Dad tensed. Knox shifted. "There is no paperwork," she said finally, her voice tight. "You'll just have to trust us." Trust. That word, the blade they always used on me. Knox launched into a pitch about his latest venture, talking like a salesman peddling miracle cures. "Nova, this is cutting-edge R tech. You're in the field, you know what this means. Just a little push and we're set." He weaponized my career to manipulate me. Then Dad snapped, slamming his hand on the table until the silverware rattled. "How can you sit there and watch us suffer?" Mom's voice slid in behind his, soft and slicing. "Asher's one of us too. Don't you want him to know his roots?" That line almost broke me. Dragging my son into their mess, using him as leverage. My hands trembled beneath the table, but my voice stayed steady. "I will not sacrifice my son's future to clean up your chaos. Not anymore." Knox scoffed. "Oh, look at you, acting like some wounded martyr. You got lucky, that's all. Some of us strive for greatness. Some of us just scrape by." My vision swam. My mother's face hardened. My father clenched his jaw. They hurled insults and guilt like stones. And then Knox slipped. "The debt, most of it's mine," he blurted. "Mom and Dad backed me." The room froze. My mother's face drained. My father looked away. Of course. It had always been about Knox. Then my mother leaned forward, her voice sharp with threat. If you don't help, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of daughter you are. I'll even bring Asher into it if I must. That was it. Something inside me clicked, clean and cold. You have 24 hours, I repeated. The silence that followed weighed more than any scream. And in that silence, I finally understood. This wasn't a family issue anymore. This was war. After they stormed out, the house felt too quiet. Not peaceful, but hollow. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the clock ticking, each mundane sound slicing into the emptiness they left behind. I stacked their untouched plates into the sink one by one. Each clink of porcelain against steel was a reminder of how much of myself I had wasted trying to keep this family afloat. I should have felt relief, but instead I felt something heavier. Grief. Not for them, for the illusion. Upstairs, Asher's room light was still glowing. He had come home from Harper's just before they left. He sat on his bed, cross-legged, doodling rockets in his notebook. When I stepped in, he didn't even look up. Did they leave? He asked quietly. Yes, I said. For good? I paused. We'll see. He didn't answer, just kept sketching. A crude rocket ship with flames shooting from the base. I kissed the top of his head, forcing my voice steady. You don't have to worry, I've got us. But I knew those words were just as much for me as they were for him. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Not calls, notifications. My stomach sank when I saw it. TikTok. My mother, in full performance mode, her tears streaking perfectly down her face. She sobbed into our camera about the cold-hearted daughter who had abandoned her parents in their hour of need. She flashed photos of me and Asher in front of our West Austin home, framed like evidence of my selfishness. The hashtags were merciless, were ungrateful, daughter, family, traitor, heartless. I scrolled through comments until my hands shook. Strangers dissected me like they knew me. Some pitied my parents, others tore me apart. How can she do that to her own blood? Poor dad. Imagine being thrown out by your daughter. That boy deserves better. That boy. Asher. My chest clenched. If she dragged him into this circus, he'd be humiliated at school before he even knew what betrayal was supposed to mean. By lunchtime, the video had crossed 100,000 views. By dinner, 500,000. My coworkers glanced at me sideways in the office, whispers trailing behind me like shadows. My manager called me in, his voice gentle but prying. Is everything okay at home, Nova? Do we need to be aware of complications? I smiled tight, lied, said it was under control. Inside, I was burning. Tessa didn't wait for me to call. She pulled me into our corner booth at the cafe, her laptop already open. Save everything, she instructed. Screenshots, links, timestamps. This isn't just drama anymore. It's defamation. Her voice was low but fierce. They want a war on your reputation. Fine. Then you fight it with paperwork. So I did. I gathered every piece of evidence, her video, the comments, the emails that would soon follow. By the end of the night, I had a digital folder labeled case. It felt cold, mechanical, but it also felt like armor. The following days blurred. My father sent texts begging for just a little bridge loan. Knox released his own videos, spinning the story into a narrative where I had sabotaged his dreams for years. My mother escalated with more crocodile tears, hinting about my divorce, about Asher's broken family. But in the middle of the storm, Marin called, my real estate lawyer. Her voice was steady, calm in the chaos. There's a provision in your parents' mortgage, she said. 2 years ago, they refinanced. It's in default. The bank can sell to any qualified buyer without their consent. If you want the house out of their hands, Nova, now's your chance. For the first time in weeks, I felt oxygen in my lungs. A way out, not just defense, offense. The decision came quickly. I gathered financials, authorized Marin to move forward. Within days, the sale was underway. The East Austin house, the same house where my college fund had vanished into Knox's pipe dream, was about to become mine. It wasn't just real estate, it was a message. When the papers cleared, Marin drafted official notices. My parents and Knox had 24 hours to vacate or face legal consequences. She also sent a cease and desist letter to my mother over the TikTok videos. Knox responded with rage, his texts full of insults, calling me a traitor. My father tried bargaining, offering partial repayments he couldn't possibly deliver. My mother doubled down online, her followers egging her on, but their noise no longer pierced the way it used to. I hired a cleaning crew, changed the locks, and walked through the East Austin house like a surgeon dissecting an old wound. The air smelled of dust and regret. In the attic, they found a battered box tucked beneath Christmas ornaments and broken tools. Inside, my grandfather's original will, bank statements, a letter addressed to me. My breath caught as I unfolded the letter. His handwriting was shaky but clear. The money is for Nova's education. No one else's dream, no one else's debts. Tears blurred the page. Proof. Validation. After years of being painted as the selfish one, I added it to the file. My arsenal grew. Meanwhile, Asher tried to keep up his normal life. Basketball practice, science projects. His telescope pointed at the stars, but he heard the whispers at school. He asked me one night, "Why does Grandma hate us?" My throat tightened. "She doesn't hate you," I said carefully. "She just made choices that hurt us, and when people are hurting, sometimes they try to drag others down with them." He nodded slowly, too wise for 12. Then he went back to sketching rockets, his pencil scratching the paper like it could erase the weight in the room. That night, I sat alone on the back porch, staring at the pool's glassy surface. I thought about every sacrifice I had made, every boundary I had swallowed, and I realized I was done playing defense. My mother wanted to control the story. My brother wanted to rewrite it. My father wanted to guilt me into silence. But I finally had the one thing they couldn't twist, the truth written in ink, signed by the man who had believed in me more than anyone else. The next time they came home, I would be ready, not with open arms, with paperwork, with proof, with the weight of every silent wound turned into steel. This time, the reckoning would be mine to deliver. Airports are strange places for endings. People think of them as beginnings, honeymoons, new jobs, homecomings. But for me, the Austin terminal became a courtroom without walls. Their flight home landed late afternoon. I stood just beyond the security rope, Marin beside me, a folder tucked nightly under her arm. The smell of fried food and jet fuel filled the air. A TV above the gate blared muted news, but all I heard was the thud of my pulse. First came Knox, striding off the plane like a man returning from victory, his phone already in hand, his lips twitching in some half-smirk. Behind him, my mom clutched a travel pillow, her face arranged in a performance of weariness. She must have practiced the entire flight. My dad followed last, moving slower now, but his eyes searching, calculating. They spotted me at once. My mother's face lit up, but not with love, with the satisfaction of someone about to twist the knife. She stepped forward. "Nova, thank God you're here. We knew you'd come around." I didn't move. Marin stepped ahead, calm and precise, and handed over 3 crisp envelopes. "Consider yourselves served." Confusion washed over their faces. Knox tore his open first, his eyes scanning the words until the blood drained from his face. He looked up, voice sharp, cracking the fragile calm of the terminal. "You bought the house?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "It's mine now. Legally, you have no claim. And if you don't vacate by the deadline, the sheriff will enforce it." My father's jaw clenched. My mother blinked, stunned. Travelers slowed around us, curious. A little boy tugged his mother's sleeve and whispered, "What's happening?" Knox's volume rose, desperate to seize control of the narrative. "You're a thief. You've been against me since day one. Always jealous, always trying to sabotage me." I stepped closer, my voice low, but sharp enough to cut. "You mean since you stole my college fund? Since you promised the world and left me sleeping on floors while you played visionary?" Gasps rippled from strangers nearby, though they didn't know the details. They could feel the weight. Nukes tried to hold my gaze, but his eyes darted. My mother jumped in, her voice trembling, just enough to sound authentic. "We did it for the family, Nova, for you. You've become so cold. Can't you see? We only wanted to survive." I pulled a folded letter from my bag, the one my grandfather had written me. I held it up, the paper yellowed, but unshaken in my hand. "This was never yours to spend. He left it for me, for my education, and you twisted his trust into your excuse." For once, her tears froze before they could fall. My dad stepped forward, his voice booming, trying to reassert his authority. "That's enough. You don't humiliate your family in public." I squared my shoulders. "You did that yourselves. Every lie, every debt, every threat to drag my son into your mess, that ends today." Something broke in his eyes. Not remorse, not yet, but fear. Fear of the one thing they had never expected: my refusal to bend. Marin spoke again, her tone professional, unshaken. "You've been notified. Further contact outside of legal channels will be considered harassment. Violating the order will result in immediate escalation." A circle had formed around us. Now strangers pretending not to watch while openly listening, phones discreetly angled, recording. The humiliation they had once used against me was now theirs to carry. Knox exploded, his voice raw. "You'll regret this. You think you're better than us because you got lucky? You'll be nothing without family." I stepped in close enough that only he could hear. "I already am better because I chose not to become you." His face twisted, fury flashing, but his hands stayed at his sides. He wasn't brave enough to risk the cameras. My mother finally tried one last angle, her voice breaking. "Please, Nova, don't do this. We'll lose everything." I met her gaze, and for the first time, I felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, just freedom. "So did I when you took it from me at 18. Now it's your turn to live with the cost." The silence that followed was the kind that cracks the ground open. My father's shoulders sagged, my mother's face collapsed in on itself. Knox stood trembling, his mask shattered. Security approached, alerted by the raised voices. Marin stepped forward, explaining, handing over documents with practiced efficiency. The officers nodded, their presence sealing the confrontation like a gavel strike. As they were escorted toward baggage claim, my mother twisted back, eyes searching mine for any last flicker of weakness. There was none. I stood rooted, my hand steady, my breathing even. For the first time, the weight wasn't on me. It was on them. When the crowd finally dispersed, I sank onto a bench, my body shaking from the adrenaline. Marin sat beside me, her hand light on my shoulder. "You did it," she said simply. But I knew it wasn't over yet. Public battles have aftershocks. Reputations don't die quietly. And as much as I wanted this to be the end, I could already feel the tremors of what would come next. Still, for that moment in the buzzing chaos of the airport, I allowed myself something I hadn't felt in years: victory. Not the kind you celebrate with champagne or confetti, the kind that comes from surviving a war you never chose and realizing you finally held the power. And as I walked out into the Texas sun, my phone buzzing in my pocket, I thought of Asher, of his rockets and his quiet resilience. And I swore to myself, no matter what storm came next, I'd face it with the same steady resolve, because now I knew I could win. The days after the airport felt strange, like stepping into a house where the furniture had been rearranged. Everything looked familiar, but the weight had shifted. For the first time in years, my phone didn't buzz with my mother's demands, Knox's pitches, or my father's booming threats. The silence was almost unnerving, but it didn't last. The fallout came quickly. My mother posted one last video. This time she wasn't crying. She wasn't even blaming me. She turned on Knox. Her words were clipped, defensive, almost frantic, as she explained how he had dragged her into his schemes. She begged her followers for forgiveness, admitting she had gone too far. It should have felt like vindication, but all I felt was emptiness. When your own mother uses social media as a confessional booth, you stop craving her apologies. Knox spiraled. His videos grew erratic, the confident swagger slipping into desperation. He railed about betrayal, about how I had stolen his shot at success. But the numbers didn't lie. His startup was gone, his credibility fractured, his parents' house no longer his stage. Eventually, even his followers stopped caring. And my father, he did the one thing I never expected. He went silent. No calls, no texts. He faded out of the picture, like smoke dissipating after a fire. Meanwhile, the court process unfolded. Maren guided me through each step, her calm precision a shield. The will, the IOU, the refinance papers, they painted a story that couldn't be denied. The judge ruled in my favor, ordering the properties secured and protecting me from further harassment. Financial restitution wasn't possible, the money had long been burned through, but the recognition mattered. The truth was on record now, not just a wound I carried in silence. The East Austin house was officially mine. I hired a crew to clear it out, to sweep away decades of dust and regret. I kept only one thing, my grandfather's letter. Everything else, I let go. Asher came with me on the last day. We stood in the yard beneath the pecan tree, its branches heavy with late summer leaves. He looked up at it, then at me. "Can we plant one at our house?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, this time we'll watch it grow together." Back in West Austin, we dug into the backyard soil, our hands dirty, sweat dripping under the Texas sun. We planted a young pecan tree, small but sturdy. Asher checked on it every morning, convinced it would sprout overnight. I told him what my grandfather once told me: trees and trust both take time. Life began to settle into a rhythm again. Friday, taco nights returned, homework spread across the kitchen table. Laughter replaced the tension that had haunted every family dinner. I also said yes to the journalist who reached out. I told the story not for revenge, not to humiliate, but for the people out there sitting in the same silence I had once endured. The article went live, raw and unfiltered, and the response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from strangers, daughters who'd been scapegoated, sons cut off for saying no. People who thought they were alone until they read my words. It was healing in a way I hadn't expected. My pain had become proof that survival was possible. One evening, as Asher worked on a science project, Tessa and I sat on the porch, the cicadas buzzing around us. She leaned back, sipping iced tea, and said, "You know, you could make this your work, helping people, like you, like your mom tried to destroy. Turn this fight into something bigger." I thought about it, about law, advocacy, community work, about channeling the scars into something useful. For the first time, it felt possible. Later that night, I tucked Asher into bed. He slid a drawing under his pillow, a rocket ship aimed at Mars. Flames bright, the stars scattered above. I kissed his forehead and whispered, "You're free to dream, Ash. No one will take that from you." And as I turned out the light, I realized the truest victory wasn't winning against my family. It was building one with my son, rooted in love, protected by boundaries, watered with truth. The pecan tree outside would take years to bear fruit, but it was ours, and so was the future. Family is supposed to mean safety, protection, love, but sometimes the people who share your blood are the first ones to wound you. I spent years carrying their betrayal like a second skin, convincing myself that if I just gave a little more, maybe one day they'd finally see me. They never did, and that's the truth I want you to hear. Love without respect isn't love at all. It's control. I chose peace. I chose my son. I chose to stop apologizing for protecting the life we built. And if you've ever stood in that same space, torn between your own survival and the family who should have been your shelter, know this: you're not alone. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is draw the line and not step back. If this story reached you, if it stirred something you've carried quietly, tell me in the comments. Share your story, because when we speak, we remind each other that silence doesn't win. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. It means more than you